Rawad, what's the latest now from Beirut?
Now we just heard from the deputy leader of Hezbollah, the deputy of Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah, Sheikh Naim Kassem. He just addressed supporters of Hezbollah and the rest of the Lebanese in a televised speech where he looked very tired. There was no backdrop like the usual speeches we saw before for Secretary General of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah. He mourned the death of Nasrallah as a great leader for the organization. However, what's important is that he mentioned that the organization, despite all this disarray, despite all the assassination of its commanders, including Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah, that the organization will continue its fight against Israel, and that it is ready for any potential ground invasion if it happens in southern Lebanon. No call for a ceasefire whatsoever in that speech. No retreat from the earlier objectives of the war that Hassan Nasrallah himself had put forward on the table before his assassination. No explicit decoupling the conflict in Lebanon with the conflict in Gaza, and absolutely no chance for a ceasefire in his speech. He mentioned that this is going to be a long war, and he called on for his supporters to be patient and trust that the organization is still stable and can hold on this fight. Now, what is interesting is that shortly after his speech, we heard remarks from the caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati after his meeting with the Speaker of Parliament, Naim Kassem, who is possibly the ally of Hezbollah, yet he has great connections with the West and the Americans and Western powers. Mikati, after his meeting with the Speaker of the Parliament, delivered on the contrary the exact opposite of what the deputy of Nasrallah delivered in his speech. So Mikati just said moments ago that as soon as there is a ceasefire, the government is ready to send the army and deploy the army south of the Litani River. He also mentioned that the Speaker of Parliament, Naim Kassem, is ready to call for a ceasefire, and that as soon as possible, Parliament will be called to convene to elect a president for all of Lebanon and not any controversial figure or confrontational figure to any party. So we're seeing a dichotomy here. Hezbollah is saying one thing, it's saying that this war is ongoing, that it will be a long war, that it is ready to fight Israel. On the other hand, we're seeing the Speaker of Parliament, Naim Kassem, and the caretaker Prime Minister, Najib Mikati, calling for a ceasefire, saying they are ready to deploy the army south of the Litani River, and saying that they are ready to call for the parliament to elect a unifying president for Lebanon in such a historical moment of time.
And indeed, this is coming as the humanitarian situation in Lebanon is only getting worse. The health ministry has said more than 1,000 people have been killed, 6,000 wounded in the past 2 weeks, not to mention the close to 1 million people, the fifth of the population, who've been forced to flee.
Indeed, in particular, the upper estimate is that 1 million people have evacuated southern Lebanon, part of the Bekaa Valley, as well as Beirut's southern suburbs. Over 120,000 of them are living currently in dire humanitarian conditions in evacuation centers, which were opened by the government. Roughly around 750 evacuation centers were opened across different areas of the country, mostly in safer areas. Around 750 schools, as I mentioned before, are now evacuation centers. With the school year start has been pushed until things settle. So it is a real humanitarian crisis, and it is unclear for how long the country can sustain it.
Rawad, thank you for that. That's Rawad Taha reporting for us from Beirut.